Hello, and welcome to our presentation on the economics of risk management. This presentation is for BDA 513, Risk and Uncertainty Analysis. My name is Iris Swiderski, and I will be presenting along with Andrew Schnell and Zachary Sanford. To understand the economics of risk management, we must first understand what is economics. Economics is the study of how society establishes the institutions and social norms which result in the allocation and distribution of resources. Resources are real things, and they're often grouped into categories such as land, labor, or capital. We also need to understand what is risk management. Risk management is a process of evaluating different decisions and their financial risks, together with identifying how to avoid or minimize the negative consequences of each of the potential risks. There are 10 economic principles for understanding how people make decisions, and they are: people face trade-offs. The cost of any action is measured in terms of foregone opportunities. Rational people make decisions by comparing marginal costs and marginal benefits. People respond to incentives. Trade can be mutually beneficial. Markets are usually a good way of coordinating trade. Government can potentially improve market outcomes if there is a failure or if the market outcome is inequitable. Productivity is the ultimate source of living standards. Money growth is the ultimate source of inflation. And society faces a short-run trade-off between inflation and unemployment. No matter what the risk management issue is, the amount each option costs matters. In order to effectively perform their jobs, all risk managers should have a basic understanding of a few economic principles. These include scarcity, trade-offs, opportunity cost, marginal analysis, and rent seeking. Let's start by discussing each of these economic principles. Scarcity is described as recognizing that our resources are limited in relation to society's wants and needs. We cannot do everything. When we only have limited amounts of resources, we are limited by what we are able to accomplish. Without sufficient water, we cannot grow tomatoes. Without being able to grow tomatoes, we're unable to produce tomato paste, tomato juice, or whole canned tomatoes. With the lack of production, the prices in the stores may increase. That increase ultimately comes from the scarcity of the resource of water, because without the limited resource, we are unable to grow the required tomatoes. Trade-offs are what occur when we have to choose between two different options. The most common trade-off in risk management is efficiency versus equity. Every choice requires trade-offs. Benefit cost analysis has been developed to aid decision makers in deciding the benefit of trade-offs with a common metric of dollars. Opportunity cost is the cost of what you must give up to get something. When we choose one option, we have simultaneously forgone the opportunity to have chosen another. For example, when you purchase a candy bar from the snack machine, it may cost you $1.50, but with that $1.50, you could have chosen a bag of chips or a different candy bar. The opportunity cost of the candy bar is the other options that you gave up by making the specific choice. Marginal analysis is an examination of the associated costs and potential benefits of specific business activities or financial decisions. The goal of marginal analysis is to determine if the costs associated with the change in activity will result in a benefit that is large enough to offset the cost of the incremental change. Marginal costs and marginal revenues will demonstrate a break-even quantity at a specific price. Considering the change in the average total cost based upon the quantity and price will be useful to a risk manager to determine if purchasing those extra 100 tomatoes at a specific price will be worth the incremental profit.
Hi, my name is Andrew Schnell, and I'm just going to be picking up on rent seeking here. So the next topic is going to be rent seeking. It's actually defined as the manipulation of public policy or economic conditions in order to increase profits. In layman's terms, is really lobbying. So companies can lobby or give money to the government or government officials, and then those government officials will then create or vote on policies that will then benefit the company, and it can benefit the company when in profit, or it can influence a factor that then influences profit. But they're in a risk management perspective, they are controlling their risk. They're trying to mitigate their risk if, say, something in legislation is up for a debate and that would affect them negatively. They will then lobby to make sure that doesn't get passed. Ethical or not, I'd love to debate the ethics on that, but that's what's happening. All right, so next up is trade. From a risk management perspective, trading and agreements can have upsides for both parties involved, and each side can manage or negotiate their own risk. Um, Obviously, each side is going to want to have as much upside with as little as downside as possible, and that way they're again mitigating or managing their own risk. So this example right here I have is the Agreement on Sanitary and Phytosanitary Measures, or SPS. This was based in Uruguay, and it occurred in the late 80s to early 90s, and this is where the government were able to impose sanitary measures on food in order to ensure the health of their people. These measures have been in form of trade restrictions, which can then hinder the market. So, in order to protect or in order to ensure that the food supply coming in was adequate enough for healthy, not healthy enough, but free of any, say, pesticides or something that can then harm someone, they don't want that. They are going to then either restrict that trade or slow down that trade process, which is going to have an effect on the market. So basically, what the government of Uruguay was doing is they were mitigating that risk, and that risk then had a trade off of hurting the market or increasing costs or whatnot. So this can be a slippery slope because governments they have to make sure that these measures are non-discriminatory. They don't want it they want it to affect everyone or no one. They don't want it to affect a certain group of people because that would be then unethical. And they also don't want to hurt the market too much. So lastly, we have markets. There is an impact of risk management on markets. We haven't already covered it. We're going to cover it again. Um, this can cause markets to do either better or worse. We've talked about how risk can influence the market, and one of those ways, or a better way to explain that, is really an externality. So an externality can either be good or bad, but mostly people will focus on the bad externalities, such as like pollution. Um, it's important to try to mitigate pollution risk, but in doing so, that's going to cost money. So, say the government wants to put in a policy to lower the effects on say carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. They can control that, but in doing so, then Microsoft has to change how they produce one of their Intel processors, and that's going to then increase or decrease the cost, and in big quantities this can then have a rolling effect and affect the market. So if we're looking here at this graph I have over here, it can show how changing an externality then creates a new supply line, and then that equilibrium is then pushed to the left, which means that there's going to be more supply than there is demand, and they're going to have to find an equilibrium. In order to get there, it's going to take a little bit of time. So it's important to fully research the risk that you want to mitigate and check for alternatives so we can focus on reducing the externality, which is, of course, of utmost importance, but you want to disrupt the market as little as possible to make sure no one loses their house or anything on this. So there you go.
Hey, I'm Zachary Sanford, and I'm going to be closing out this presentation with a breakdown of the different types of economic analysis methods discussed in the reading. Starting off with cost-effective analysis, this type of analysis is concerned with achieving a fixed objective with the least expenditure of resources. In the context of risk management, it can simply mean the least costly way to obtain a given level of risk reduction. When analyzing risk management options, cost must always be considered. For example, if you found a method that will reduce your risk by half, that sounds great, but it could cost double your budget and not be feasible to execute. This analysis requires a measurable output and estimates of costs at different output levels. When these parts of risk management options are properly quantified, decisions are easier to make. Our next type of economic analysis is incremental cost analysis. So we are continuing to analyze cost, but this time in a different way. This method is used when there isn't a fixed level of risk reduction or a fixed expenditure on risk reduction. Incremental cost can sometimes be called marginal cost in other business contexts, and it is used to compare different resource allocation options in like terms. Incremental cost can simply be defined as the change in total cost divided by the change in output. Provided in this table on the right side of your screen are different incremental costs of options to prevent the risk of children eating vitamin pills mistaken for candy. In this example, the incremental costs show that redesigning the container is the best option because it has the lowest incremental costs of poisonings prevented. Our final type of cost analysis is benefit cost analysis. It is used when risk managers are seeking the option that will do the most good given the choices. Benefit cost analysis simply analyzes the advantages and drawbacks of a risk management option. When performing this analysis, all advantages and drawbacks are in monetary terms and quantified properly. If the advantages of a risk management option exceed the drawbacks, then that option is considered economically efficient. In this perspective, the most desirable option is the one with the maximum positive net benefits. Moving on to risk-benefit analysis. This type of analysis is used to compare the risks of a situation to its related benefits. In risk-benefit analysis, the risks remain quantified in risk-related terms, while the benefits that accompany that risk are often monetized. A common application of risk-benefit analysis is found in the pharmaceutical world, where rigorous methods are used to demonstrate the level of risk patients and other decision makers are willing to accept to achieve the benefits provided in that new drug or healthcare product. Our final type of analysis we will discuss is economic impact analysis. This studies how the direct benefits and costs of a risk management option affect the local, regional, or national economy. The economic impacts of risk management options often include effects on jobs, incomes, prices, taxes, and possibly measures on economic welfare. Benefit cost analysis, which we discussed before, measures direct benefits and costs of risk management options, but does not convert direct effects into their indirect effects on the economy. Well, this economic impact analysis does. These effects include changes in employment, wages, business sales, or land use. The most common form of economic impact analysis traces spending through an economy and measures the cumulative effects of that spending on the impact region. The impacts can forecast the number of jobs created or lost by a risk management option. Many economic impact models predict impacts on personal income, business production, sales, profits, and tax collections. It is extremely common for this type of analysis to be used when considering government spending options. Alright, so that wraps up Group 3's presentation on the economics of risk management, and thank you for watching.